Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. I'd like to call the May News Charter School Board of Directors meeting to order. We'll start off by reviewing our ethics statement. Give me 1 second. Okay, as a reminder, board members board members are reminded, thank you, Rodney, that is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of this meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Thank you. If you've had a moment to review the agenda sent out by our secretary, I'll entertain a motion to accept tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Rodney.
Okay, Rodney, don't forget to say your name.
I did. I said Rodney.
Did you? Okay. All right. Do we, oh, I'm sorry. It is moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think technically we have to vote by roll call.
All right, roll call. Okay, Rodney Dunn. Rodney?
Approved.
Benji?
Approved.
Robbie?
Approved.
Jane?
Approved.
Nicole? And Nicole go. Michelle?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
Okay, there's Nicole. Nicole? Oh, we can't hear you, Nicole. I saw your mouth move, but I can't hear you. Okay. All right, the motion to accept the agenda has been approved. Do we have any public comments? Either through chat or pre-submitted comments?
I didn't get any. But if somebody's got one, if they just want to, I think if they can raise their hand in the chat, I can unmute them and we can circle back to that towards the end of the meeting.
Okay, we'll move on to the approval of our April board minutes.
Motion to approve.
This is Robbie. Second.
Robbie seconded. Okay, any comments, questions? Nicole, do you approve?
Approve.
Jane?
Approved.
Michelle? Michelle?
Oh, sorry, you cut out. I only caught half my name and I was thinking, who is that? Approved.
Robbie? It's gonna take a long time, really. Robbie?
Approved.
Benji?
Approved.
Rodney? And Paul?
Approved.
Okay. Thank you. Motion has been approved. And now we'll move on to, I think it's the athletic committee, athletic booster club president. No report from the booster club. Okay. And then I gotta go back to my phone. I'm sorry to look at.
Student Government Association report.
Thank you, Benji. Student Government Association. Now, we certainly want to wish our SGA president congrats on her upcoming graduation. Director's report.
All right. Thanks, everybody. It's so good to see you all. Dr. Edwards here. I sent out my report. It's posted up so you can all see it. I'm just going to hit the highlights for everybody. A lot of this is just going to be informative, and I'm trying to still learn my way around. So here we go. Starting off with some really great news. The ACT scores came back, and the goal was not only met, but exceeded in 2 of the 3 areas. The third we're not sure about yet because the scores have not come back for that. But to explain, they were trying to raise the new score from a 20 to a 21, and they exceeded that and raised it to 21.9. Super excited about that. Additionally, they were able to raise the composite score for the Hispanic and Latino students from 15 beyond the goal of 18 to 19.9. So 2 really big celebrations there for the students and the teachers. The final goal is to increase college readiness math scores from 26 to 30%. Those numbers will be released in the fall, and when they do, I will report back to you and let you know how we did. Next is just a really big shout out to everybody who came together to create a really smooth, seamless, effortless plan to get all of the students' belongings off campus, to get all of the news items back on campus, including uniforms and Chromebooks and all kinds of wonderful things, and doing so within the COVID-19 parameters, and got a lot of really positive feedback about that. So huge shout out to the team for that. The next is the online survey results are complete. And that was something that I believe Mr. Betterton referenced in the April meeting, and I'm just going to circle back to it and follow up with you. It was a 9-question survey. 58 teachers replied to it, and the 3 main takeaways are that 1, teachers really struggled with making contact consistently with their students. 2, on average, the students weren't as on top of their school assignments as the teachers had hoped they would be. They reported an average response to their work at 53%. So there's some work to be done there. And then we have to work on some professional development with them. You know, it was a last minute thing. Everyone was scrambling. I think they did a tremendous job, but there's certainly an area of growth for us as we move forward with professional development and supporting them with more online instructional resources, more training, and a more consistent use of the platform to make it a little bit smoother as we move into kind of a new normal for us, which we're not exactly sure what it looks like yet, but we're going to get there. Senior Academy leader, Ms. Nowinski, compiled a couple of positive comments that she heard from families throughout some of the events that happened. The overall theme there is just an exceptional amount of gratitude. Everyone just was really thankful, from the students to the teachers to the families, for the work that was done during remote instruction, from delivering signs to celebrate the students and the seniors to all the work in between, prep for AP exams, all of those things. Just a lot of gratitude for that. The next item is the graduation plan. They are going to hold graduation on June 12th at 6 o'clock, regardless of what phase we are in. There was a plan that was shared out with families on May 18th, and that includes 2 plans, depending on which phase we are in. Phase 1 will obviously look different than the phase 2 plan. However, both will include speeches, live streaming of the event, and a really nice little sunset gathering for the seniors once the graduation ceremonies are over. The details are laid out in that, again, shared with families on the 18th. And we're pleased with that plan, because that was a collaborative effort between student government and Senior Academy leader. We have a new primary academy leader, Debbie Matthews. Super excited to announce her. She is going to be starting June 15th. The news community was notified about her acceptance on May 19th. And to highlight a little bit about Miss Matthews, she spent over 20 years in the elementary school classroom. She has been an elementary school administrator for 5 years, and she was born and raised in Johnston County. So another Johnston County native for our news family. The next item is just to let everyone know that the contracts were sent out to all of the teachers and TAs and faculty at News through the amazing work of Deborah Hope, the HR consultant. She was able to streamline that process, make it completely electronic, and we have all of the contracts signed and returned. The next item is the COVID-19 task force. I realized very quickly coming into this that we were going to need a team. We were going to need a strong team to put plans into place, plans A, B, C, D, all the way through Z at this point, with so many different pieces of information coming at us on a daily basis. So this team is going to be comprised of the academy leaders, the technology director, and teacher leaders who were chosen from survey submissions. I sent out last week a survey, and those questions were about the grade level, content area, expertise that the teachers all had, as well as their demonstrated experience in online instruction and online platforms, and then also their experience in effectively coaching other teachers, because this is going to be a teacher leader growth opportunity for News. And so we will start work this week to develop our plans, to put them into place, and to be able to share them with you. But that is where we're at right now with the fall and the new school year. So there's a lot of moving parts to that, but I will say quite emphatically that no plans have been solidified at this point. So whatever might be floating around out there as purely speculation. Next is just a organizational chart that I was able to assemble. It is just a very simple public facing document that shows the roles within News Charter School. Each box is a position within the organization. It looks a little small, doesn't it?
It does look small.
My apologies. So we have the board, superintendent, and then the next row, I feel like I'm right up on the screen. Contracted workers, human resources, and office manager that oversees accounting, and the data coordinator, the technology director, academy leaders who oversee the teachers, the counselors, and the teacher assistants. Exceptional children oversees teacher assistants, teachers, contracted EC services. And then the dean of students, the athletic director who will oversee the contracted athletic services, and then the facilities maintenance technician. So that's
Melissa, Dr. Edwards, can you speak to is there anything different on this org chart versus the current operations of the school or the previous operations?
the only difference is that it is now documented that the EC exceptional children position does oversee teacher assistants, teachers, and contracted EC services all together.
So previously, the athletic director reported to the executive director, not the high school principal?
That is my understanding, is that, and maybe Robbie can speak to this better than I can, but the goal here was to indicate that the athletic director would be able to work with coaches and oversee different positions within that organization, and then the athletic director would then report to me.
So I think at one time she did report to Ms. Nowinski, but I think it was a dotted line. I think she directly reported to our superintendent or Susan director. So that is a little swivel, but I mean, obviously, they all work together.
Mm-hmm.
Exceptional children, is that a title or is that a grouping? Is there another word missing, or
No, I left it as exceptional children because right now it's loosely defined. Um, and we need to speak to that at some point later, but not now.
Okay.
So when you have human resources, are you talking about a function reports to you, or is that another personnel grouping?
And that is my understanding is that Deborah Hope is reporting currently to the board. I guess my expectation is that at some point she will report to me if that is a longstanding position, whether it's her or it's a part-time HR position moving forward, whatever that might be, that if that happens over the course of this school year, that individual will report to me.
So you view that different than contracted workers. Who would that be?
Contracted workers would be anyone that we contract out to do a service for us outside of HR. I know HR right now is considered in that group, but I do think we're going to dig into that a bit more and have more discussions about what that's going to look like.
Okay.
So Dr. Edwards, so whenever you got accounting under the office manager, that is Arcadia, so it's our current services or whatever.
Yes, that's how it is currently set up.
So would we want to add the front desk staff to, is that under the office manager?
Yes, and I can put those in there so that all roles are represented. Absolutely.
So, Dr. Edwards, without counting the contracted workers that you have there, it looks like you have 10 positions reporting directly to you. That's a lot. Is there, and I recognize that you're just trying to get this down on paper, but you know, I would encourage you to think about how that you might be able to put some layers into the organizational structure. Noose is a pretty flat organization as we look at things, and for you to have that many direct reports, that's a lot. So
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, I hear you 100%. I think for this year, because there is so much going on, so many moving parts, that I would feel more comfortable with just having a lot of work and knowing everything as much as I can of what's going on, at least just for this school year.
Well, and I think that makes great sense. There's no way to know what sort of structure you might consider if you want to consider one that's different than that without really understanding how this one works. But I would just encourage you to at least be thinking along those lines, just from an organizational perspective. You need because you will also have an outward facing role as the face of Noose, and that's hard to do with as many inward facing roles as you have listed here.
Absolutely. I completely understand. Completely. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, the next few things I want to just briefly touch on are things that I'm working on. I think it's important for you all to know where my focuses are, whether it's a long-term focus or a short-term focus. And so these 6 things are things that may take me a little bit of time. It may be very quick, and we're back to talking about these things in June. But I just want you all to be being completely transparent with you about where my focuses are. So the first one is the policy and procedure structure of working with Deborah to make sure that we've got checks and balances for HR, accounting, office management, all of those pieces. And then also working with the handbooks, a revision of the handbooks for the coming school year, as well as compensation, looking at the compensation plan, possibly making revisions, and in the spirit of creating more clarity. The budget is a interesting piece of this. We do have a working session planned with Acadia for June 1st, and I do think we will be talking about this in a few weeks again. The next is the school plans. That is COVID plans, remote instruction plans, and then also working with strategic planning. And then the final two pieces are a review of possible additional classroom space, and then the renewal lease for the quad modulars that we have. Both of those documents are linked for the budget, the proposal, and then some potential costs involved with those. I am not yet ready to speak to that in specifics or have any requests from you. I just want you to know that is something that I'm looking into.
Very good. And I see you have no direct action items right now in open session, but that you will be requesting a closed session at the conclusion of our regular agenda. Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments? Thank you. That was a very good update. We appreciate everything. All right, so we're going to move into our committee reports. Executive committee, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I'm on so many meetings, I'm trying to keep track, but we have not met in the month. Is that correct, Nicole?
Hold on, I'm looking at my minutes to make sure when that last.
Yeah, we did. It was May
Okay.
6th.
We met on May 6th. And how long was it?
So we need to ratify our full contract because the executive committee is recommending full approval to the board of the contract. I don't know if we were calling them renewals or contract agreements or employment agreements that we reviewed previously. And then Dr. Edwards came back and filled in some of the gaps for executive committee, and we are now recommending that for full board approval.
Well, the only thing that we voted on was to allow a second installation of extra duty pay to the administration team. You know, Dr. Edwards made some recommendations, but we didn't vote on that.
Well, not vote, but we're putting forth a recommendation to accept the full list that we had previously reviewed at a board meeting, paused for some additional information, and then the additional information and the same full list was presented at executive committee.
But don't we want to do that in closed session?
I mean, it's just recommending approving the personnel list. I mean, if you want to do that, if there's more comments or questions, but do you want to do that in closed session, board?
Let's just
I
update
think
it.
it's that it's personnel. We'll do it in closed session.
Okay. Okay, so add that to your item list, Dr. Edwards. And that was all that we discussed at the executive committee meeting. And we sent out the notes. Thank you to Michelle, to Nicole and Rodney for taking the notes. Okay, we're gonna move to the finance committee, academic affairs, which has not met during this time, so there's no committee report. Finance committee.
Yeah, so what we have is before you in the mini minutes is the actual budget for April. No major changes there. We're still tracking around $119,000 surplus. What we did have in discussion was about just checking back with Johnson County regarding the pro rata share of the county allocated funds. It does look like those funds are being distributed appropriately. So thanks to Dr. Edwards for reaching out and kind of building a connection to the finance department of Johnson County Public Schools for those that know funds flow from the county directly to us. So what we will be watching is like Dr. Edwards mentioned, we'll be meeting with Acadia June 1st to start looking at how we're looking to finalize this current budget for the end of our fiscal year, and then also start some preliminary planning for next year's budget. Dr. Edwards has already submitted, all of the staffing positions, salaries, et cetera. As we know, that's the major part of the financial picture. So if you would, if we can just go ahead and approve this budget as it exists, and then I've got one other item to cover once we get that off the plate.
So this is Robbie. I move that we approve the April budget as presented.
Second, this is Paul.
Okay, any additional questions or comments? All in favor? Rodney? Benji?
Approved.
Robbie?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
Jane?
Approved.
Nicole?
Approved.
Michelle?
Approved.
Thank you. Motion is passed. Thank you.
So one other quick item, Nicole, I didn't see it in the board packet. I did send it over, so we'll just need to include that on the board packet when we post it. The contract for Acadia is actually up this year. If you remember, we went into a 2-year contract. We discussed it at the Finance Committee meeting and with Dr. Edwards. The recommendation is that we go ahead and extend that contract for 1 more year, not necessarily do a 2-year contract, but our recommendation is to do a 1-year contract. It's the same contract we're in now with no increases, same rates, same terms, everything's exactly the same. And that'll give Dr. Edwards 1 year to really get her head around the financial inner workings, working with Acadia. And then if she decides to offset some more services to them or less services or whatever, it gives her a year to really get her head around the operations of that with Acadia, and gives her the flexibility after the end of the year if she wants to make any changes there versus going in.
Okay. Need a motion to approve the 1-year Arcadia contract?
This is Paul. Make a motion to approve.
Robbie, second.
Thank you. Second.
Yeah, I second it, Dawn. It's Robbie.
Oh, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Robbie,
Yes, ma'am.
you say aye for approve. Rodney? Benji?
Approved.
Paul?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. Motion has been passed.
That's all we had for finance.
Okay, do we have the facilities update?
So we do. I think Dr. Edwards, this is Robbie. I think Dr. Edwards gave a good update on, we've got a few things on the table. We have met with Stevenson Contractors and are talking with Vanguard to see how we pull things together. That will be a definite item of business that we'll have all the details for at the next meetings. One thing we do have to definitely take care of is the contract renewal for the current modulars. But we have met a couple of times and we're still doing that weekly.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay, board development. I asked for the nominations of officers, just to say that as we go into concluding our academic year, that people can submit nominations for the various officer positions that will be open. We also, I'm going to do this in a form. It'll also be our formal intent to continue in your current role. So that will come out. I think, Michelle, you're going to go over the bylaws, because I think there's some timing issues on when we would vote for that. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so in chatting with Nicole, she asked that we memorialize our discussion in January about whether we were going to open nominations for the board because it was not reflected in the January minutes. Is that correct, Nicole?
That is, I just heard from, it wasn't, we lost the recording and it wasn't in the minutes as to whether we were going to open nominations for new board members. And so I just wanted to clarify that and kind of memorialize that in our minutes.
So Michelle, do you want to kind of recall the conversation about opening nominations for more board members that took place in, I believe it was January?
It was January, and yes, and if anyone thinks that I'm saying something that's incorrect, please let me know. But based on what I recall, we had a discussion about whether we wanted to open the call for nominations, and we talked about some of the pros and cons of doing that. And I think ultimately we decided that at this point it would not be the best time to be bringing new board members on. I think we all kind of felt things were up in the air.
Okay, so to memorialize it, Nicole, do we need to accept the conversation or?
So
I'm not
I
sure.
think what we need to do is
Supposed
to,
vote on that?
no, we can't vote on it because we've already voted on it. But the vote.
And what was the vote?
The vote, we all voted not to open the call for nominations.
So if it's not documented somewhere, it's just, I think that's.
Was the vote unanimous?
No, I didn't vote. If you recall, Michelle wanted to open nominations. Other than that, was unanimous, as far as I recall.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, Dawn, you said you wanted to open it for
No,
nominations?
I did. I wanted to open nominations. I believe that was the meeting when I mentioned that I was going off the board and I felt that we needed some more members. And we discussed the challenge of standing committees per our bylaws requiring board members, and that we were kind of running out of capacity. But that was also at the time, as the board mentioned, that we were in active recruiting for our new superintendent, and that, was a big project that we were handling. And so the nomination process is also a very big project. And so in trying to manage, we declined to pursue nominations. That's how I recalled it, if anyone.
That's correct, no.
And we voted not to pursue nominations.
That's my recollection as well, Dawn.
Mhm.
Okay. Michelle, do you feel like we need to revote, just given that we don't have any documentation of the vote? Or
You're muted, Michelle. Muted.
I'm sorry, and we already voted, and so the action was taken by the board. It's just not yet been put into the minutes, and so that just needs to be put into the minutes. And I don't think it's something that we could vote on now anyway, because according to the bylaws, the time period has already passed.
Yeah. That we had to take the action in January per our bylaws.
That's correct.
So would we put it in this month's minutes that we had a discussion to recap the January action?
I think what we probably should do, and Nicole, you tell me your thoughts on this, is that we amend the minutes from that January meeting, and then we can approve those amended minutes at the next board meeting.
Okay.
That's just my suggestion.
Nicole, are you comfortable with that?
Maybe she's off.
Yeah, she might be. I see.
There's-
I see.
She's muted.
Well, there's also a little yellow.
Yeah, this thing. It sounds like a very clean approach to me, Michelle.
Okay.
And-
All right.
So I unmuted you. Can you hear us?
Yes. So I make a motion to amend the January 2020 minutes, reflect a vote to not open the call for board member nominations.
Say that one more time, Nicole.
Let me type it. I make a motion to amend the January board minutes to include a unanimous vote to not open the call for nominations for new board members.
That's correct. I'll second.
Any other discussion on the topic or questions? Okay. Rodney?
Aye.
Benji?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Okay, motion has been passed.
Bobby says aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robbie. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Your picture, people's pictures are dropping in and out. Robbie says
that's
aye.
me.
Okay, thank you. Motion has been passed. Okay, so Michelle, would you review our bylaws, where we are with our bylaws?
Yes. So there were, I was going through and hopefully was trying to get everything finalized. There were a few outstanding issues that I felt like needed to be discussed as a board. It was not something that I could just make a decision on. So I wanted to bring those back. Rodney, I'm going to get you to scroll down to page 5. Okay, so the highlighted areas. Sorry. So the highlighted areas are areas that I had issues with. And felt like we just need to discuss. Then the first one is under our meetings. And I had noted here, do we want to add a provision for emergency meetings? And the reason I thought about that, one, the statute allows for it, but the other aspect is that there is reference to special meetings. But we could certainly add in a provision for emergency meetings. If we wanted to be able to hold a meeting in within 48 hours or something to that effect. I just want to get your ideas about that. I guess given the,
Would it emergency,
I'm sorry, Nicole?
emergency considered special meetings? That's kind of what I always thought.
In the, I believe in the statute, they're spelled out a little bit differently. I'm going to pull it, look really quick.
Or maybe we should change the verbiage and call them emergency meetings instead of special meetings?
Well, they're both. So for the statute references if a public body recesses a regular, special, or emergency meeting. So the difference is we obviously have our regular meeting. A special meeting would be if there was something that came up that we felt like needed to be discussed, but we maybe couldn't discuss it at the board meeting, so we called a special meeting to discuss it. An emergency meeting is when there is an absolute emergency. We've got to meet immediately to make a decision as a board.
So it sounds like it would be appropriate to put an additional section for an emergency meeting, yeah?
So anyway, I just wanted to get everybody's feedback on that.
So an emergency meeting, would that require less advance notice?
That's correct.
So we would be authorized to do an emergency meeting with only, say, 2 days notice?
Give me 1 second. So I think that right now, under a regular meeting, we're only required to give 48, under the open meetings law, we're only required to give 48 hours notice.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Why do
So,
we need so much time for a special meeting?
well, that would be also the same thing, the 7 days. I mean, the 48 hours. We allow 7 days notice for board members in our bylaws, but as far as notice to the public, it's only 48 hours, and that would be for special and regular meetings. And so what it says for an emergency meeting is that the public body shall cause notice of the hearing to be given to each local newspaper, local wire service, radio station, so forth and so on, which includes the newspaper's wire service. And that's only if they have asked for a written request for that. Notice shall be given either by email, by telephone, the same method used to notify the members of the public body, and shall be given immediately after notice has been given to those members. The notice shall be given at the expense of the party notified. Only businesses connected with the emergency may be considered at a meeting. So it doesn't, the statute doesn't specify a time frame.
Okay, so right now, okay. Anybody have any other comments? So right now, Nicole is asking to add emergency meetings, which would be distinguished from special meetings. Is that correct?
Yes, and it makes me think about, some kind of, can everyone hear me? Or just make sure I'm not muted.
Yes.
Okay, a situation where we have a catastrophe on campus and we need to meet immediately without notice, perhaps. Michelle, does that sound appropriate?
Right. So when
So we wouldn't have to have any notice?
Right, and so when I was looking through this, and I was looking at a book on open meetings law that's published by the UNC School of Government, and what they say is that all that is required is notification to any local news medium that has requested notice. Persons other than the media are not entitled to notice of emergency meetings. The manner of notice is either by telephone, email, or in the same way the board members are notified. There's no minimum time period for this notice. The meeting may be held as quickly as the public body's members can gather.
Okay, that sounds reasonable and gives us, some flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
And they
So you wanna
define
add that, Michelle, and then
yeah, and let me say this too. They define emergency meetings in this book as the meeting must concern generally unexpected circumstances, and those circumstances must require immediate consideration by the public body. And so I was thinking of a situation, maybe when they were closing the schools initially, and there were some decisions that needed to be made pretty quickly. And I think that would probably have qualified for an emergency meeting.
Okay.
so why don't you add that, and then, because we're not voting tonight, right? You're just
No,
gonna add
we're
it
not.
and we'll vote
No.
next month. Okay.
I'm with you with the comment, why do we need to hold an annual meeting? Or classify it as anything special?
I'm sorry, where are you looking at, Dawn?
The section 4, which is under special meetings, the next one is annual meeting.
Okay.
I mean, since I've been on, we literally have never really had a formal annual meeting with any kind of special anything.
I thought about that too. Because it seems like that it's almost set up like you would have an annual meeting if you did not meet monthly.
Yeah.
Make
I
sure
think I
that
may
you are
be- Oh, I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, so that seems like based on the fact that we meet monthly, that's not needed. However, you may look at, there's certain things that are decided at that annual meeting, maybe assign a date to those, and that may already be assigned. So,
There may be a requirement, and there's some reason that I'm thinking there's a requirement that we have an annual meeting. I cannot specifically cite to that right now off the top of my head, but it seems like there's some requirement somewhere that we have an annual meeting.
Are we supposed annual meeting?
I'm sorry, Nicole, what?
Are we supposed to vote for officers at our annual meeting? That's kind of, I
So
wasn't
that's-
clear about
that's-
when we vote for officers.
Right, and that is one of the highlighted things that I've got highlighted to discuss. But typically, I would think that an annual meeting would just be one of our regular meetings that we designated as our annual meeting.
That's correct. That's what we talked about before, was that the timing was out of sync with officer elections, and then our annual meeting was supposed to be when we approved the final audit and the financial report from the previous fiscal year, and we didn't get that information in time, like for July, to when we'd actually vote on officers. So that's why we said we needed to separate those two meetings. I mean, what we should just do is that we should every year we should vote on our officers at our July meeting, which gives time for new people to come in, and then we can designate any one of our meetings as the annual meeting of when we meet. Whether it's if the audit stuff is ready in August, we could declare August, September, October, whichever one, when that information is available. That's what I remembered for the requirement for the annual meeting, was to approve the financial end of year fiscal reports. Michelle, I don't remember exactly where or if that's documented, but that's what I remembered.
I think we
Maybe
need
something in the
to,
nonprofit corporate statute as well, but I can't remember.
well, I mean, if Dave was here, he would tell you that a lot of this came from, a charter school, board bylaw template. And it's important that we have a bylaw that actually functions, reflects how we actually function as a board, unless it's, it's law that we have to do certain things.
I think it's required, even outside in boards that are not affiliated with school bodies, and on other nonprofit boards that I've sat on, they always have an annual meeting designated in their bylaws. At least that's what I have seen. Because there are some boards that really only meet once, and that's at the annual meeting.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think that was back to Paul's comment about it almost assumes that maybe you're not meeting monthly. So I think,
I think we need to do it.
I don't know if we need to attach anything to that annual meeting, just that we can designate when the annual meeting is.
Yeah,
Because I don't recall doing any of those things. We had a retreat, but we never called that an annual meeting.
I think we did at one point call it an annual meeting.
Well, we did, remember, when it was written that the fiscal and the officer elections were voted on at that meeting. That's when we determined they were out of cadence.
Okay, so where have we landed?
I mean, I think we can just leave it as we'll have an annual meeting within 4 months after the close of the fiscal year, which basically gives us July, August, September, and October. Uses 4 months to designate, as the information becomes available, which one of those 4 months we will determine to be our annual meeting for that year.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? we need to kind of make sure that we got a solid plan for Michelle, because the goal is next month to vote on it. So any other discussion on that one? Now we have,
Another thing, Michelle, is if you change the annual meeting, then you're going to have to go, and there's a lot of references to an annual meeting that would have to be changed too. Is that correct?
I think all of that's already been done.
Okay.
well, now this would just, it would appear give us more flexibility, because we're just keeping it 3 to 4 months after the end of the fiscal year. So wherever within that, quarter, we can assign.
Okay, Dawn,
Mhm.
Dawn, I found the statute. It's chapter 55A-7-.01, annual and regular meetings. A corporation having members with the right to vote for directors shall hold a meeting of such members annually. So I don't know if that's necessarily, if you don't have regular meetings, that you would be required to have an annual meeting, or if that is considered you're supposed to have an annual.
Sounds like you can't just be a board in a corporation and then never meet formally. You at a minimum have to have an annual meeting where everybody gets together.
So that is, I think you're correct with that, Don. With my company, that's exactly what our lawyer told us. We have to have one meeting. So we're a little different. I think we can be flexible on that, is what I believe.
I
Okay,
don't
so-
think why not just leave the annual meeting and make it, make it an actual function where the annual meeting is where we vote for officers and approve the fiscal year budget.
Yeah, we can leave that, but it doesn't tie us down to a particular month, because we would have, I think it's 4 months. So anytime within the 4 months, the board can decide when
Sure.
that annual meeting is.
Okay.
Does that sound fine to everyone? That
Yes.
gives us July, August, September, October. So up until October, we decide when to have the annual meeting. Okay. What else?
Okay. So, all right, so we're leaving annual meeting as is, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then, oops, let me get to the right document here. All right, then we're going to scroll down to page 6 to section 2, election, term of office, and qualifications. And so we're taking out the voting on the board of the officers at the annual meeting, and we're calling it at the July board meeting. And so I was wondering, do we want to do the elections in June versus July, so that the officers can then, or are we going to wait until the next?
That's the start of your school year or start of our physical year is July.
What's this? Yeah, it's the start of the service of the board member, any new board members.
July 1st. So we would probably want to vote in June.
What was that, Nicole?
I said, well, if our fiscal year starts in July, wouldn't we want to vote on everything in June?
I know we'd had some discussion one time about if we waiting till July would allow any new board members the opportunity to vote for officers as well.
Oh.
My issue with allowing new members to vote is that if they've literally just gotten on the board, that would be their first board meeting. They might not even know the board members very well at that point. So if we want the new board members to vote, should we push it back, or should we just do it in June and then have new officers start at the same time as new board members?
Well, I just thought about something. I don't know that this would ever happen, but I literally just had the thought. What if we had an entirely new board, or a more majority new board coming on in July at some point in the future? And if we vote on the officers in June, there may not be sufficient individuals to, anyway, just to,
Can we wait and
Right.
vote in August?
Right, it's,
no, July.
yeah. And to your point, Michelle, if you have board members who are going off and then they get to vote in June on who the officers are, it doesn't make a lot of sense either, does it?
That's true. That's true.
Well, I would say, you also have people who are just moving out of their position, not necessarily going off the board, so they still would be eligible to vote.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, you can still vote. Like for me, I could still vote if I stayed on the board. I just wouldn't be the chair.
Is there anything written, Michelle, where the officer terms are required to run from aligned to the fiscal calendar from June 30th?
I do not know. I do not know.
Yeah, I mean, there's trade-offs
Doesn't
either
make
way.
most sense.
Why are you asking that, Rodney? Why wouldn't they run for the current year?
Oh, no, I was just asking if we're required to. That was all. I mean, because there's trade-offs no matter which way we do it, right? If you do it before June, you basically eliminate the opportunity for a new board member coming in, really experienced in a particular area, then they wouldn't qualify for that year. You could say that's favorable because they probably need at least a year on the board before they held an officer position. You kind of give or take depending on if you're forced to do it across the fiscal year boundary, but.
I just think June is like the conclusion and when you prep everything to get ready for July. If you're talking about July, you're really talking about the end of July, and that kind of takes a lot of time of planning and transition away from someone. So, or can we make it that the board votes every year? Is that too problematic?
I think it needs to be consistent in the application within the bylaws.
Okay.
So, and the reason I was asking, I was thinking about what you said, Donna, was that if we give a time for transition, is there anything that would prevent us, say, if we schedule this every year, of doing it in like May, so that then your new officers then have, basically June to get ready for any stuff for kind of that transition month into the next year, versus if you do it at the end of the year and the whole fiscal year started, you don't really have a lot of leeway there. That's why I was asking if there was a something written somewhere where it had to align to the fiscal calendar. That was.
I'm scrolling through now to see if I see anything, but I don't know.
Yeah, personally, I wouldn't mind a January vote and not so much on the academic year, but more on a calendar year. But that takes you all the way through, for 2 years and get somebody, if you're voting in January, you would scoop up people who are new. They could be eligible by the time the vote comes up again.
That's not a bad idea.
Is there any concern if we do it that way, though, that we're halfway through the year and that we're sort of bifurcating the year in terms of planning and all of that, and for the executive committee and everything? I feel like there's a lot to be said for keeping the office slate in line with our fiscal and academic years so that there's continuity through a particular school year.
Point.
For the teachers and the administrators, for students and parents, so that there's, I think if we do the changeover in the summer, I think that probably would create less sort of chaos for the community. But that's just
Point.
I feel like in January, that folks express their intent to continue on the board for the next year, and then the vote in June, and then the new members coming in July. I don't know. I just think that I like that continuity better. Just my thought.
Okay, well, can we,
Can I ask a quick question about the process itself, just because I haven't been through this? So when you talk about June as the vote, do people, Dawn, I know you said you were going to put out documents for people to do the nominations, but does that typically happen concurrently? Like, is there a time to see who has been nominated before the June meeting? Like, do the nominations typically happen in May? I just haven't done it before, so.
yeah, we have not, and that's one of the reasons why, I mean, we have not been, in all honesty, very formal about this, to the point where the executive committee might have said, well, we're just leaving you all in place. Are you okay with that? And so I think, we need to move towards a little bit more formal process where we have a slate of officers. Ultimately, we may want to stagger the chair and the VP so everyone's not leaving, perhaps at the same time, and you have to get a whole new slate in. But we can, I mean, that could be something that we look at later. But I think if we have the first 2 week a deadline for mid-June, and then the slate goes out to everyone, so and then we have the meeting at the end of June, and that was my goal.
So one of the other things that I had added in the comments is that, do we want to add a part that we will do nominations for officers?
I think we should call for nominations of officers in May.
Okay.
So given the
That way
comment,
we'll give everyone time.
okay, go ahead.
Robbie? Go ahead, Robbie.
No, it was Rodney. I was just trying to
Oh, I'm
figure out.
sorry.
I was just trying to figure out, these are going to go into bylaws for approval, which would go into effect, if we voted in June, would go into effect for next year, correct?
July.
Yeah, so I think that we would probably, since we can make them effective as from the time that we voted on it, the next board meeting, which was the end of June. They still have to be approved for the Office of Charter Schools. So, I mean, we can make them effective July 1.
Right, which would apply for next year, but I'm saying the current bylaw stance is, as we do it at an annual meeting, which we would have to deem one. So would we do that in June or July?
Well, we wouldn't vote for the officers at the end. I'm not sure if I heard you correct, Rodney, but we wouldn't vote on the officers at the annual meeting. Well, I guess we would have to.
That's what I'm saying. There's current.
Yeah, because it's current, right? Our current laws require us to do it at the annual meeting.
And if we do the call for nominate just for this year, then we can vote on July. We vote on the bylaws in June, and that takes place for the new the new fiscal and academic year. Correct?
In July?
We vote on June on the bylaws.
Right.
We stick to the existing bylaws, which say we can, we assign July as the annual meeting for the vote. Would that be a conflict once we voted on the new bylaw?
No, because let me think. I think if we approve the bylaws at the end of June, I think we can vote in July.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's just assuming that you won't each year you're going to vote in June or July moving forward. I think that's until that decision's made. Even if you vote July 1st, if you want to vote in June, then you can't act it for the next year. It's just a timing issue between June and July. So I think we need to know what's the consensus of the group, June or July, when we move forward.
For voting officers?
That's correct. Yeah.
So July would be, if you had a group of new board members, July would be their first meeting, right?
That's correct.
So that's one thing just to keep in mind is if you're looking to vote based on if you had to change over in the board, the old board versus the new members.
I guess it makes sense to do it at the July meeting as I'm thinking about it, because if someone is going off of the board, they're not going to be having to serve under those officers on the board. It's those new individuals coming on in July, they're going to have to serve as officers, or excuse me, as board members serving under those executive office positions.
Yeah, and if we go with July and we vote in June, then we can just get both of them at one time. We'll just start in July.
I'm confused. Are we saying we're going to vote in June to take effect in July, or are we saying we're going to vote in July to take effect in August?
So we're going to vote on the bylaws at the end of June, and then we'll vote on officers at the July board meeting.
So they wouldn't actually become officers until the August meeting, or they would immediately become officers?
Probably August.
Yeah, I'm looking here to see if there was anything in the bylaws that specified when they.
That's my concern with voting in July.
Me too.
Is that you are having folks who won't be effective essentially until the August meeting, and then you're right into school. To me, it makes more sense to vote in July. So at that annual meeting, or our retreat or whatever, that everyone's in place and ready to move forward.
So can I ask this? Because to me, it makes sense to vote in June and have the new officers take effect in July as, so that, again, they'll follow basically the same fiscal and academic calendar that the school follows. And I recognize that means that new board members would not have an opportunity to vote, but I will just say, as one of the two most recent board members, and I don't know how Benji feels about this, but I would not have felt like I had enough information to vote last year at my very first board meeting. I would not have felt like I had enough information about the different people. And actually, I would rather, even though I know I would be serving under those officers, I would rather allow the people who know the board members, know what, sort of how they have voted and all of that, to allow them to make that decision moving forward. But that's just my personal opinion. But I mean, there may be plenty of people who could come on and feel comfortable and confident voting, but I honestly wouldn't have felt like I had enough information to make an informed vote literally 3 weeks after I became a board member at my first board meeting.
Okay. Where have we landed, board? I mean, I'm just.
Is anybody opposed to doing June? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay, Michelle, you have your answer.
June, okay. All right. Next thing, hang on, I'm not done quite yet.
Okay, I know, that's why.
Okay. Scrolling down to page 7. With regards to the seal, do we have a seal?
I've never seen that when the articles of incorporation for the nonprofit entity were formed. I've never seen the actual seal or a copy of the seal being used, so.
Right, neither have I.
I thought we
Nicole,
had
you're
a
supposed to
seal.
be the guardian of the seal. Do you know anything about the seal?
Who?
I said, Nicole, the secretary, is supposed to be the guardian of the seal.
Well, I've been the secretary and I've never seen nor had anyone reference the seal when I was the secretary.
Well, I think as a corporation, aren't you supposed to have a seal?
Well, so that's what I was sitting here looking. It looks like unless it's articles of incorporation or this chapter provides otherwise, every corporation has perpetual duration and succession in its corporate name and has the same powers as an individual to do all things necessary or convenient to carry out its affairs, including without limitation, to have one of the things is to have a corporate seal, which may be altered at will, and to use it or facsimile of it by impressing or affixing it on any other manner reproducing it. So
Maybe we need to ask Dave or Chris.
For some reason, I think I've seen our seal before, and it was just very, just very basic.
Okay.
I think I've seen it.
So if we have to have it, we can just leave it in and then just investigate where it is and what it looks like.
okay, so I can email Dave and ask Dave about that.
I mean, I would imagine he would be somebody who would have a lot more information.
Okay, and otherwise just leave it in there for now anyway? Or,
Yes.
okay.
Well, it sounds like we're supposed to have it, so
Mhm.
yeah, so we have to leave it in there.
Okay, scrolling on to the next page under committees. So during the April board meeting, I received an email from my board member to include the facilities committee as a standing committee in the bylaws. So I need, if we're putting that in here, I need the committee purpose and the duties from the committee chair. So that it is, looks like the other committees that are in the bylaws. So are we adding the facilities as a standing committee? And then
We did vote to add it in our
Okay.
previous meeting.
Okay, I didn't remember that, so I apologize. So the other thing then is, I guess I just need that committee chair to get to me.
Robbie, are you willing to serve as the committee chair? Is he gone? Because then you have to come up with the committee purpose and then a slate of people, committee members that you present to the board.
Sorry, I was not unmuted, but yes, Dawn, I'll do that.
Okay. So what does that mean if we don't have it? He obviously doesn't have it right now, Michelle.
Right.
What is that?
What I'll have to do is, Robbie, how quickly do you think you can get it to me? Can you get it to me within maybe 2 weeks?
I'm out of town this week, so I can work on it next week. You and I'll talk. How about if we talk early in the week and let me try to get things lined out?
And let me see who I can look for, but does anyone quickly have, Rodney, do you or Paul maybe the form for the committee purpose so that he has the same format?
He can look in the bylaws.
Or you can look in the bylaws, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
all right, next, on the next page, on page 9. Under the Academic Affairs Committee, I think it's the first place. No, hang on, that's not the first place. Okay, the first place I have it noted is under the Finance Committee on page. Finance Committee starts on page 8. On page 9 is where I have this noted. Do you want to keep this part? So there are some places where it references, well, in every one of the committees, this was there, except for, I think there was one committee where the committee chair took it out. And I think there are some committees that it may fit, but other committees not. But the consent of when it's talking about the appointments of the chair of the members of the finance committee shall be made annually by the chair. Appointments of the chair and the members of the committee should be made annually by the chair of the board with the advice and consent of the board. And it currently reads, and school leaders in accordance with the bylaws. So is that something that we want to do then?
I would say so, because if we just say we want a teacher, I would, think it's appropriate to go to Dr. Edwards for consent that that teacher can serve on a formal school board. And
Okay.
not just put them on the board without that person, her even agreeing to that.
Okay. I think resource committee, I think it was taken out.
Yeah, I think the method on that was with the school leaders, when we talked about the way it was supposed to be divided up, there was supposed to be resource discussion that was supposed to be on a board level, and then there was that which was supposed to be under the superintendent. And that was my understanding of that intent. So if you've got that which is under the superintendent and you've got that at a board level, then why would we have a representative from that's outside that's from the staff?
Right. So basically it would be our, people that we would solicit from the community, and we would not
Right.
solicit anyone from the school, because they would then have their own separate kind of operations for fundraising.
Right, that's the thought.
I'm
I
fine
think-
with that.
I would actually,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if there's two ways you can look at it. I would recommend for maximum flexibility that, and the school leaders' consent for anything for a standing committee be removed. Because it is a board level committee. If we were going to, include like a school staff member on a committee, professional courtesy is that, we should discuss that with the superintendent of the school before they were included. But it shouldn't box ourselves in that says, that we have to have their consent to include somebody, because that's a generic statement.
So
I don't-
leave in with the advice of the board and the school leaders?
What if you say in consultation with? That way you're not,
Or with input, so it would be consent of the board and input from the school leaders? Because we don't really get consent from the school leaders. I guess it would just be input.
I like the with consultation to the school leaders. I think that gives you the professional courtesy.
Okay.
Okay, so I can rework it. And do we want to include this for all committees so that it would read, appointments of the chair and members of the board development committee shall be made annually by the chair of the board in consultation with school leaders and the consent of the board in accordance with the bylaws?
That sounds good.
I would say I would be more specific in consultation with the superintendent.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. All right, so I'll fix, are we going to add that to all of them then? Everybody on the, okay. All right, let's see if there was anything else. No, that was it. The next thing was another question about the seal. So under general provisions on the page 7, but that was it. And so I know what we're doing with that. So that's it. So I will make these changes. And then as soon as Robbie gets his portion to me, I will work as quickly as I can I'll be out of town June 6th to the 13th, but I will work as quickly as I can to get those to everyone so that we can vote on them at the end of our June meeting.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And it's been a labor of love. The bylaws is certainly a challenging project for a committee. And so I appreciate your diligence and patience with us and so forth. So we're almost there. So
Almost there.
Almost there. Thank you so much. Okay, Jane, strategic planning.
Yes, thank you. So the Strategic Planning Committee has met twice since our last meeting. While we will typically meet monthly, we are currently meeting every 2 weeks to try to get some traction on the research and the sort of ground level work that needs to be done in preparation for the broader strategic planning work that needs to be done. So we met May 6th and May 20th, and Dr. Edwards was able to join us on May 20th, and we were happy to have her and look forward to having her input moving forward. She's a great addition to the committee because she's got some great background in SWOT analysis and strategic planning, and so we're looking forward to her experience on a variety of levels. So that's going to be great. We are currently working diligently to gather data and to put together lists of issues that we feel the strategic plan needs to address. We're looking at those in terms of the 3 pillars that the school is using right now. So operations, culture, and academics. And once we get those lists together, we're going to take an initial, we're going to make an initial attempt at putting together a SWOT analysis, which a SWOT analysis is when you look at each issue in terms of whether it's a strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat, or any issue could be more than one of those. It could be both a strength and an opportunity, or weakness and a threat. So we'll be putting together that work in the next couple of meetings, and the goal and the intent of bringing that information forward to the board as we think about moving into the next stage of the strategic planning process. If you remember that document that we looked at last month, we are still right now in that first column of the 4 columns. And as the committee finishes the SWOT analysis, or finishes our version of the SWOT analysis, that will sort of signal us moving into that second phase, that second column, where we'll be bringing the board in and then moving forward, looking at broadening out the scope of who's included in that strategic planning process. So we're looking forward to, I'm hoping in the next 2 to 3 meetings for us. So I'll definitely be able to report out on that in June. And, you know, I know that we as a board have talked about having a summer retreat. I would love, if that ends up working out, I would love to begin the board portion of the strategic planning, at least the foundational part of that. If that could be something that we could include in the retreat, that would be wonderful. We're also going to be as a committee kind of putting out there to the broader news network a book on charter school strategic planning that anyone who's interested can take a look at, and I would encourage board members to pick up a copy of it and read it as well. And that'll be coming out in one of the school communications. And so with the name and the title and the author and everything. So anybody have any questions on where we are? We're really, right now, we're just trying to do, as a committee, we're trying to do a lot of the sort of beginning work of gathering all the information that we need to help inform the broader process.
Thank you, Jane. I'm very excited that you guys are making such good progress with the committee.
Thank you so much. One last thing, as we, my understanding is once we vote on the bylaws, our committee would become a standing committee, and I would like to, and whether we do this now or Michelle, you could tell me offline. I would like to request or propose or something, adding a couple more people to the committee. We originally had the IT teacher as part of the technology teacher rather as part of the committee, and since she's left, we haven't replaced that role. And I would like us to potentially bring in maybe one more teacher, one more parent, and we've as a committee talked about trying to bring in a community member. And so I would like to get, as we become a standing committee, sort of a typical slate of how many people to have on that committee. But right now there are 5 people plus myself and Dr. Edwards, and it's a lot of work. So I don't know if I need to formally request that or how I need to do that. So Michelle, feel free to, if you need to talk to me about it offline or something, that's fine. But I just wanted to put that out there.
That's probably one of the biggest committees around.
So
I know.
What the bylaws say, Jane, they say that this is for all the committees, it said the appointments shall be made annually.
Okay.
It doesn't say that if someone goes off, they can't be replaced, or
Well, I wasn't sure.
I don't think it means that they could not be added in the middle of the year. But I just think annually those appointments are made, but I think there's nothing that can prevent you from adding a member. So what would bring a person of interest to the chair, and then
I wasn't sure, particularly because we aren't officially a standing committee yet, whether we need to approve the entire slate for the committee, even the people that are on it right now, because we're not officially a standing committee yet, right?
Right. So if you're not officially a committee, but once you are, then that would apply. But if you're talking about prior to becoming official committee under the bylaws, then I don't think that you would need to get approval.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any old business? Okay. Do we have any new business for open session? All right. Then I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
This is Robbie. I make a motion to go into closed session.
For what purpose?
We're going for.
You said administrative and personnel reasons?
That's exactly what I heard him say. I'll second that. For administrative and personnel reasons.
Thank you so much. Okay, so do we need to vote on that? I can't remember if we vote on that. Okay,
You're still the chair, okay, for at least another month.
I can't tell you how many I'm sure we've all been in plenty of meetings, but the Skype meetings seem to just take something from my brain. Okay, so we are
all vote to go into closed session. Yes.
Huh?
We usually do vote to go into closed session.
We do. Now that yeah, so we had a motion and a second. I believe.
From me.
Questions? All in favor? Rodney. Aye. Benji.
Aye.
Robbie,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
Nicole. Nicole. Okay, well, that's the majority. Okay, motion has passed. We'll go into closed session, which requires us to go out into a new segment. That should be in your invitation. Okay, thank
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we're back in open session and I will entertain motions for action items discussed in closed session.
I'll make a motion
to,
Go ahead, Nicole.
I'm sorry, motion to reclassify exceptional children coordinator to exceptional children director, along with the superintendent's recommendations for salary changes.
For administrative staff.
Yes.
Second. Paul.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Rodney?
Aye.
Benji?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Okay, motion has been passed. And then we need to ratify an executive committee recommendation. Can we have a motion?
A motion to ratify the executive committee's approval of the superintendent's recommendation for all current staff employment contracts.
Excellent.
Rodney seconds.
Who seconded?
Robbie.
Okay, Robbie.
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 Any further discussion? Okay, please signify approval by saying aye. Rodney? Benji?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
And Robbie?
Aye.
Okay, motion has been passed. Thank you. And I believe that was the final motion since Nicole combined two together. Is there
Make a
anything
motion to
else?
adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I wasn't calling everyone's name. Now, one more time. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think I'm gonna, do you anticipate we'll have a June face-to-face meeting?
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right. I'm gonna miss our little virtual meeting.